we're going to give it just a couple more minutes because it looks like folks are still trickling in, and then we'll get started with intros, and then we'll go into our top line items. So we'll just give it just a minute. And Loretta, are you good to let folks in while I'm reading?
I'm on it.
Great. So I'm going to just very quickly go over some logistics before we have intros. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the December listening sessions for the California Truth and Healing Council. We have general listening sessions today from 1 to 2:30, and this Wednesday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. And we will not have a council business meeting this month. We anticipate that the next virtual business meeting of the council will take place in late January. My name is Christina Snyder, and I'm a member of the Dry Creek Rancheria Band of Indians and the tribal advisor for Governor Gavin Newsom. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge that the land I'm joining you from is the ancestral homelands of the Miwok and Nisenan peoples. I'm now going to briefly walk through some of the logistics for today's session. First, we are recording this listening session, and it's available for public participation via Zoom and dial-in. The recording and summary notes will be available on the CTHC landing page and the blog when they're ready. For those interested in following the council, ongoing updates, including listening session recordings and listening session summary documents, are available at the California Truth and Healing Council updates blog at catruthandhealing.com. And we've also consolidated those on the landing page as well, which we're hoping to make a bit more user-friendly in the next couple of weeks. You can also get updates for events by following the Governor's Office of the Tribal Advisor on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Additional details, including meeting dates, agendas, and background information, are available at tribalaffairs.ca.gov/CTHC. If you've not already done so, we'd appreciate if you could update your name to let us know who you are. And as we get into the discussion portion of today's session, we would appreciate if those that are comfortable could get on camera. We're going to start with brief introductions of council members and our staff, and those of you who have joined us who feel comfortable introducing yourselves. And feel free in your introduction if you have anything you'd like to say to the group at this time. There's no real constraints on this session. We want to give you information, but we're really more here to listen to your needs and priorities. So feel free to speak up in your intro, or you can wait and you can put anything you like in the chat as well. We'll then go through to get everyone up to speed on recent updates, and then we'll go into the listening and discussion portion of today's convening. If you'd like to speak at any point, you can raise your hand and I'll call on you. If you're using the Zoom app, you should be able to raise your hand using app controls, but you can also use Alt-Y in Windows or Option-Y on Mac to raise or lower your hand. If you've dialed in, you should be able to raise your hand by pressing *9. And you can also unmute your line if you dialed in by pressing *6. Again, we'd like to be a bit more casual and have this be a bit more of an open discussion. So if you ever feel like you'd like to speak, you can just jump in while please remaining respectful to the other participants. You can also email written comments to info@catruthandhealing.com at your convenience. Now, before we begin, I'd like to remind participants that all of our council members, council staff, and all of you are participants in this effort toward collective healing. So I ask that you engage with the council, our office, and each other with respect and with your whole heart in a healing mindset. Many of us doing this work are navigating systems that were not built for us to make change that was never contemplated. This in itself takes an enormous amount of patience and emotional integrity, and we're all doing our best to make strides in these spaces. So thank you again for joining us. And now feel free, well, we'll start with council member if you'd like to, Councilmember Lucas, if you'd like to introduce yourself and say a few words.
Yeah, thank you, Christina. Just Carmen Lucas. I'm a Coime Indian from San Diego, California. It's my honor and humble duty to be here, which is what I try to do. I want to hear what people have to say in their history. I'm concerned about California's history, that it be corrected and put out to educate the public. And I'd also like to make note of the time of the year that we're at already. We're at the end of the year. So the new beginnings start with a new month. So look forward to that. Look forward to something positive coming out of this entire process that will be beneficial to the entire California Indian community. So thank you for that.
Thank you, council member. Very much appreciate your words. Loretta, would you like to introduce yourself at this time?
Hi, everyone. My name is Loretta Miranda. I'm Chief Deputy Tribal Advisor and Special Counsel for the Governor's Office. I am joining you from Cahuilla land, and I am Serrano Cupeño from the Morongo Band of Mission Indians. I'm happy to be here today, happy to see so many names and faces of people that I know, and looking forward to it.
Great. And we also have Michael Park on from our office, who you can contact at your convenience. You can direct message him if you'd like to get in touch with us, or if there's anything that we missed, feel free to directly message Michael as well. For anyone who has joined from the public and who would like to introduce themselves or say a few words, please feel free to do so at this time. We'll give you a couple minutes. And it looks like Charlie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I would. I'm Charlie Toledo. I'm a descendant of the Towa people, native to New Mexico, but I've been here living in Napa, California since 1972, and executive director of Susquehanna Intertribal Council based in Napa County. I've been involved in human rights work regionally and globally since 1986, and working most recently as an advocate for tribes and tribal people to be at the table around issues of water. I served on the Low Income Oversight Board for 11 years as a state appointed position, advisory to the California Public Utilities Commission, and was one of the key people involved in making sure that PG&E and SDG&E and AT&T and all those companies now have permanent full-time positions for California tribal liaisons in their agencies, and also advocated through the commission to have Governor Brown in his last few years of tenure to make sure that every state agency has tribal liaisons and memorandums of consultations with the tribes in their region. Napa County being the area of a exterminated tribe, they always kind of say, well, there's no tribes here, so we don't have to do that. So the fact that the governor expanded that to say tribes in their region, then Napa County does have to, as do Marin and Ohlone territory through the Bay Area, all the tribes that have exterminated. With that expansion of that tribes in the region, it includes every part of California. And I'll just stop there, but I'm glad to be here. I've been trying to get to these sessions and apologize for not coming sooner.
Thank you. We appreciate your participation and are excited to hear more from you. Would anyone else like to introduce themselves and say a few words at this time?
I'm back, you two. Anyway, I'm Robert Levi. I'm a member of the Torres Martinez Terzcoya Indians. I'm kind of the education person, just letting everybody know what's going on with Indian education in the state of California. So with Chair Lucas's comments about education, we're working still on that AB 1554, getting more California Indian history in the curriculum. And again, we're very busy recruiting students, in California Indian students to different universities, Woodlands Community College up north, and then the California Indian Nations College down here south. So we have hopefully a perspective of about maybe 6 or 7 students who are interested in continuing their education at Cal State University, San Bernardino. So, and then plus, still working on curriculum for AB 1554 and also for the ethnic studies course that is mandatory for graduation in all high schools in California by 2024, I believe. So that's me.
Great, welcome back. And I think this is going to be a focus of the legislature for the next year. So if folks are interested, they should reach out to Robert to get more information about how to engage on some of that. I also did see that I think it's California Indian Nations College is hiring some internal support staff, admin staff, but then is also looking for adjunct professors. So if anybody has any particular expertise and wants to help that effort, I think they are looking for a rolling pool of applicants to help teach in the Indian Nations College. And it would be really cool to have some Native folks over there teaching about the things that they do well. And then I saw that the tribal college too is looking for folks for their board. So if you are someone who participates in that type of thing up here in Northern California near Woodland, they're seeking folks from the tribes in California. So if anybody is interested, I think it's a Google away, or we can find links and we can put those in the chat as well. Any other folks would like to introduce themselves to the group or say a few words or share anything at this time?
I'd like to introduce myself. Hi, everyone. My name is Mitzi Rosales, and I'm one of the Native American Outreach Counselors at Cal State San Bernardino. It's good to be here, and I'm happy to be of support should you all ever need it. I'll leave my contact information if you'd like to reach out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. Greetings. Glad to be here with everyone, trying to get this voice back after being a little sick. So I'm happy we're here virtually. My name is Andrea Porras, Chicana, Coahuiltecan, Mescalero, Yaqui descendant, here based in Nisenan land, headquarters of the Caltrans Office of Race and Equity, specifically the Native American Liaison Branch. If I could in any way be of any service in connecting anyone here to any needs at Caltrans, please let me know. Here to hold space and honor the voices of the leadership. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate your joining. Would anyone else like to introduce themselves at this time or say a few words?
Good afternoon. I'll introduce myself really quick. I'm glad to be here. I've been wanting to attend these for a while. I'm also babysitting my grandson right now at lunch, so you might hear a little background, but my name is Kelly Carrillo. I am from Tule River tribe, and I am the Deputy Director of Owens Valley Career Development Center. We do tribal TANF and a lot of different education and workforce type services and programs. So, you know, we work in 7 counties and in California. So work with actually right now 13 different federally recognized tribes. So yeah, just been really wanting to listen to the discussions going on, very important, and look forward to hearing more.
Thank you. We appreciate your joining. And thank you for bringing some of the next generations with you. We really don't have enough children in this space. Would anyone else at this time like to say a few words or introduce themselves to the group? I feel like I could call out a couple of you, but I won't because it's the end of the year and folks are probably just trying to get through. Okay. Well, I'm going to go into our updates at this time, but if folks want to jump in or introduce themselves or they have any thoughts, feel free to do so. And, or if you would like to introduce yourself in the chat, we are completely open and welcome to that, or welcome that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen at this time. Sorry, it's going to take just a second while I get there. Okay. Do I need to reverse it?
Yeah, it's in the presenter view.
Great, thanks, Loretta. And now we're on the right page, right?
Yep, now we're good.
Thank you. Okay. I'm gonna just make all of you a lot smaller. Okay. So as always, we're going to start with the council meeting principles, and this is really for every convening of the council. The council has adopted a few principles for everybody who engages, just so that we make sure that we're creating a safe space for everybody to share both some of the harder feelings that come out of this process, but also that we have a place where we're fostering support and healing and aren't alienating folks who are coming to be in this space to share and to heal. So in order to create a space where participants feel welcomed, respected, and are able to speak comfortably, we'll uphold the following principles in all convenings of the council. We ask that all participants, which includes council members, authorized representatives, staff, moderators, and the public, work towards sharing in their stewardship. If you're a participant in a convening with the council, we ask that you engage in the work of the council and with others in an open and respectful way. Engage in behaviors that will make others feel welcome. Take care of your emotional, mental, spiritual, and physical well-being, and seek support as you need it. What does respectful engagement mean? Affirm the person while critiquing the ideas. Provide feedback constructively and with the intent for mutual growth and healing. Welcome feedback and challenges to your opinions. Part of this, I think, in this context is also where someone is sharing something that is personal to them. There's not always a way to critique the idea without critiquing the experience and the person. And so I think it'll be important to, just as you are engaging in this process, to think about whether something is coming from a very personal experiential perspective, where, you know, attacking that experience, that perspective, and that frame of life is going to feel much more personal and harmful to that person rather than, you know, just an abstract idea. So I think it's going to take a little bit of push and pull, and we're going to have to navigate this all together. But just, you know, I think top lines for this is just to stay open, be mindful, and understand that as people share, they may be sharing things that they've never shared before, or maybe things that are very personal to them and very personal to their identity. Where you do have opinions, welcome feedback and challenges to those opinions. Avoid contributing to assumptions or generalizations about tribes, tribal communities, or other groups. Do not ask individuals to speak for their perceived group, and speak only for yourself. Again, we're trying to build a space of trust and open communication here. So I think none of us is ever going to know the entire story of any individual or of any background, any group. And I think what we want here is just to create a baseline of listening rather than assumption, and creating more areas where people might feel like they're being attacked or need to explain something that they shouldn't have to explain. Offer participants the benefit of the doubt. Spirited discussions are expected on these topics. See this as a sign that folks are engaged and care, and remember to be respectful as you speak, read, and listen. Honor confidentiality. Do not share others' experiences or information without permission. So part of this too is that a lot of people are going to share things that are personal to themselves and are personal to their identity. And we don't want to create a process where someone's individual personal stories are being used without their knowledge, without their consent, and for someone else's benefit or not benefit. We want people to come to this space feeling confident that their stories are theirs, and that this is not going to be an extractive process. So please be respectful of that principle. Assume that you have relative privileges and both explicit and implicit biases. Know that others may or may not have had similar opportunities, experiences, and background as you. Recognize that their contributions are equally valuable. For those from dominant identity groups, refrain from contributions that prioritize dominant experiences over those who have been marginalized. And dominant doesn't always mean privileged. And so where there are sort of the majority of a community has experienced one thing, but there's a part of the community that hasn't, we need to make space for those spaces, or we need to make space for those folks that have an experience that isn't universal. Welcoming behavior. Make behavioral adjustments for virtual communication. If you wouldn't say something to someone's face, refrain from saying it virtually by voice or text. Know that use of strong language, capital letters, and exclamation marks can be easily misinterpreted online as unwelcome yelling or aggressive behavior. Remember that tone does not carry via text. People might not realize that you're joking or being sarcastic. Leave space for others to engage and express comments and ideas if you have spoken recently by letting people finish their thoughts before adding new ones. Personal well-being. Take steps to ensure your physical comfort. Some examples in virtual meetings include shifting your sitting and standing position often, taking a purposeful deep breath regularly, raising your eyes to look beyond the screen or sit back from the computer when possible to relieve eye strain, keeping a glass of water nearby, and taking sips throughout sessions. You can also consider physically leaving the computer during breaks. Participate as you're able to and adjust your presence as needed, whether that's turning off your video or stepping away entirely. It's not expected that all participants will or should be present for the entirety of the council's work. We know and support that you will take time to eat, take care of your families and pets, but be aware that virtual convenings will be recorded and available to the public. And again, all of the recordings are available on the Tribal Advisor YouTube, so we encourage you to go there if there's anything that you'd like to catch up on. And Michael, if you could put that in the chat, that would be fabulous. We also stream all of the council members' meetings on that site as well. Personal well-being. Set up supportive sources such as food, water, ergonomics, and privacy while offloading responsibilities if possible in advance of convenings. Plan for breaks and stick to them. Seek support from your networks or from provided resources as needed. And please alert council staff to any concerns as soon as possible by emailing info@catruthandhealing.com. Seek support. We recognize that participants bring their entire selves and histories with them to the council, and that topics explored during the course of this work may stimulate emotions and thoughts that would benefit from the accompaniment and support. Although trauma responses can come from a variety of sources and contexts, the council understands that those who have experienced disparate treatment due to their Native identities may specifically want to seek assistance related to historical trauma and related issues discussed with the council. Council staff will be providing supportive resources for participants to be available for the duration of the council's work. And we can speak a bit more on that later in this discussion. So for today, we're going to do an overview of the council and its charge, as we do in all of these listening sessions, and that we'll continue to do because we know that there are people who may be joining for the first time, and we want everyone to be up to speed. And then we'll go over the regional meetings for next year. We'll go over the request for consultation that was sent out a few weeks ago, and that we'll resend just so that folks didn't miss it in their inboxes. And then we'll go through some of the subcommittee updates. We'll then open up for listening and discussion, and we'll have some pauses in between these as folks would like to engage, just so that we're not just talking at you. So what is the Truth and Healing Council? The California Truth and Healing Council is made up of representatives from California Native American tribes who are charged with bearing witness to, recording, examining existing documentation of, and receiving California Native American narratives to clarify the historical relationship between the state and California Native Americans in the spirit of truth and healing. So that is a very loaded sentence, but the council are here to receive and also examine existing documentation of California Native American narratives. And so it's really centering the California Native American experience in the genocidal history of the state. And clarifying what that historical relationship was with that fuller record in the spirit of truth and healing. What does the council do? The council will submit a final report of findings to the governor's office by 2025, which will do two things. So it should reflect a holistic understanding of the historical relationship between California Native Americans and the state. And it can also make recommendations aimed at reparation and restoration, and consider how to prevent similar depredations or policies in the future. Those recommendations for reparation and restoration, we are tentatively viewing as similar to the calls to action that came out of the Canadian Truth and Reconciliation process, where they're explicit recommendations to the state, to other allies or culpable parties to make meaningful changes toward repairing what was done here at the origins of the state, and attempt to provide some sort of restoration of what was lost. So that was a bit of a convoluted way of saying that. I'm happy to discuss more if folks are confused. The council structure. So the council is organized under a charter and is made up of voting members and non-voting members. There are 12 voting members from each of the 4 regions, with 1 seat for a non-federally recognized designee in each region. The members, though, just so folks are aware, are not viewed as being representative of their regions, of their specific tribe, of tribes like them, but are chosen to illustrate the diversity of California Native peoples in California. And so they are not driving the agenda. They are making the top line decisions, but those decisions are high level and should be informed by tribal consultation. And then each region has an alternate voting member to ensure quorum for action. The real voices in this work are going to be each of the California tribes and California Native peoples. And so we encourage you, as you engage in this process, to feel empowered to tell the council what should be included, tell the council what your narrative is, and engage fully as a participant in this healing process. The council welcomes and encourages all available methods for public participation. Participants are encouraged to attend and observe all meetings of the council, submit written statements to the council, make oral statements and testimony to the council, participate in interactive dialogues, panel discussions, and informal meetings, organize and host affiliate events on issues relevant to the work of the council, and join the work of the subcommittees. This is just kind of a visual timeline of all of the things that are happening right now. So over these next few months and previous months, staff is working with the council and the subcommittees to finalize state and third-party contracts to do the work, provide training and tools for the council and public to participate in the process, develop a draft strategic planning document, draft additional policies and procedures, build out subcommittee work and work product, and develop communications and web-based materials. In 2022, subject to COVID-19 constraints, the council will begin its regular quarterly meetings. So beginning in March of 2022, the council will shift to a regular quarterly meeting schedule. Meetings will take place in different regions throughout the state and will take place over 2 days. Day 1 of each meeting is dedicated to a talking and healing circle, with day 2 being a hearing style meeting. Programming around meetings is in development. And so if you have an area where you would like the council to meet, if you have a particular, if you hear that there is an area that's announced where the council will be meeting, where you would like to help develop some programming around meetings, which includes, working with local museums, working with local tribes, working with local historical societies to highlight the features of that area, not just for the council, but for the public as a whole. We would love to have your help in a regional planning work group. This March, obviously pending any further COVID constraints, we will be meeting in Sacramento. And one of the things that we're thinking about for that day 1 is also thinking through kind of a on the ground visiting schedule as well for the council itself, to see some of the resources that are available, but also to meet with local tribes as they feel comfortable. The tribes feel comfortable, not the council. The council will also likely meet in between regular meetings through regional hearings to increase opportunities for place-based testimonies and in-person engagement with the council. Regional hearings will likely be 1 day, with part of the day focused on testimonial and part of the day focused on site visits with local tribal communities. Programming around hearings, we would also like to have this engagement from folks as well. So for 2022, and I'm going to back up just a smidge and say, right now we have a waiver that allows for groups like this to meet virtually, and for that to be compliant with open meeting laws in the state of California. Starting February 2022, that waiver will no longer be valid unless the legislature acts. And so we are planning around the fact that groups like this will need to meet in person if they meet as a full body. And so the council itself will hold its regular meetings in March, June, September, and December per the charter. And those are the 2-day meetings. And then the council or regions will hold regional hearings in May, August, November, and then in 2023, it would be February. So we're looking at just having kind of a month and a half between hearings and the regular meetings, but want to make sure that if the entire council can't go to a hearing, that we can have something that is potentially regionally based, where the regions host those hearings, and we don't necessarily need the badly keen type of requirements. Listening sessions will continue on a monthly basis with both virtual and in-person options. And so our office is going to be shifting to be a bit more hybrid, where I will be going out into the field to be hosting in-person options, and we'll have Loretta assisting on the IT side as needed to be able to do both the virtual and in-person options. And so we will keep you posted on that. January will likely remain completely virtual for this council, aside from consultations. But as we move into February, March, and move forward into kind of a shifted state that is working on a more hybrid basis, we will start making those listening session opportunities available. And for clarity, we'll be doing in-person community in your region. We'd love to hear from you as well.
Oh, Christina, you cut out a bit right there, that last part, at least for me. I don't know if anybody else too.
Okay, my internet connection is unstable. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Okay, so where did I cut out?
You cut out after mentioning the listening sessions continue on a monthly basis and what that will look like in the future.
Okay, so in January, we'll probably stick to all virtual, and then starting February, we'll likely do in-person regional, and then also have the virtual options. So I will, if you are a leader of an organization that would like to assist in hosting a listening session in your region, I'd love to chat with you so that we can start getting those on calendar. And I can start coming around to those areas and having the community-based meetings. So I did want to flag this beautiful graphic that came out of our office that someone designed, Loretta designed herself. This is an opening for a senior project manager and program director for the Decolonizing Wealth Project, who we have contracted with to help us have, to add philanthropic, documentary, and outreach support to our office to be able to assist the council. So I said contracted, I mean, we are in an engagement, not a contract. But they are seeking someone from California Indian Country to help be that liaison internally, to work with Loretta and me and Kathleen in our office, in the governor's office, to be able to make sure we're all moving in the same direction. And so they're seeking a seasoned senior project manager with strong facilitation experience to support its work with the California Truth and Healing Council across narrative change and storytelling, philanthropy sector engagement, and the Healer Collaborative coordination. If any of you know folks that would be good for this, they are looking for people who have some experience in grant management, but also working in philanthropy. But also from our perspective, we're very interested in finding someone who can navigate this type of work with a high level of cultural humility and respect. So if you know anyone, they are already starting to process some applications that have come in the last week or so. So it would be an opportune time to get your name in there if you are hoping to work on this as well. So all of the information is on this slide, but also feel free to contact our office if you would like more information on that posting. So then if you're a California Native American tribe, we're seeking to begin initial consultation meetings. And we've done a couple already via Zoom that have been more, we'd like to hear more about what this council is, but also we'd like to meet in person, and I am ready and willing to do that. And we can set up those meetings. Some of them have been more, I've met with a TIPO, and the TIPO has been interested in bringing it to the council or to their elders council. And so we're going to set up another meeting to do that type of thing. So we're very flexible about what this looks like. And this is not the entirety of consultation for this council. This is the initial consultation meeting to just make sure that we know what your needs are as a tribe. And I'm going to go through some of the things that we're asking about. And we'll post these questions just generally in the event that the tribal chairs have not had the trickle through to folks who might want to be responsive to this from tribes, but then also to the bigger community. We'd like to hear the answers to these questions as well. So if you are a member of a tribe, or you are an elected official of a tribe who is interested in engaging early, please reach out to this email, info.tribalaffairs@gov.ca.gov. We're flexible, again, as I mentioned, about the method and mode of meetings. And meetings, not all of them are recorded and transcribed, but if we get to a point where your tribe is ready to basically submit your record to the council, and you are comfortable being recorded and transcribed, we can do that as well. So tribes can share as much or as little as they're comfortable with. And then outside of tribal consultation, the council and the tribal advisor's office are available to meet with Native American individuals, organizations, and groups that request. So I went one slide too far. I wanted to very quickly go through that consultation call. Okay. Let me. So again, this will be posted on the website as well. So folks do not need to feel like they need to answer this in the context of this meeting, but just want folks to think about what we are thinking about. So the council is at a critical point in its work and seeks additional guidance from your tribe to assist you in developing recommendations responsive to this request for consultation. Below is a non-exclusive list of questions that will help the council better understand the needs and priorities of your tribe. So what are the current needs and priorities of your tribe in engaging with this work? Please list and describe all financial, ideological, or conceptual, or emotional and spiritual needs and priorities. And the reason we ask this question is that we're working with Decolonizing Wealth Project to stand up some funding for tribal communities to be able to engage in this work. And so the answer to this question will inform kind of the buckets of funding and what, where the funding subcommittee might prioritize where funding needs to go. And would your tribe or tribal community like to be able to attend these meetings? If so, does your tribe or tribal community have existing resources to be able to travel to in-person meetings? And if COVID measures are still in place, does your tribe and tribal community have the ability to join via the internet? If not, what resources does your tribe or tribal community need to be able to do so? And again, this is also to help inform some of those funding questions. How would your tribe like to submit information, historical records, or documentation to the council? Does your tribe have existing digitized records, or will you need assistance in gathering records for this initiative? Again, this is for us to kind of get an understanding of the world around what needs to get done. And so if some tribes have, something that's ready to go and be submitted, they'll be in a kind of a different place in terms of needs and assistance versus a tribe that is still doing some of its research for its own records. If you need assistance, what kind of assistance is your tribe seeking? So it could be researching, digitizing, recording. And if you have documents in your care, what is the status of the historical records or documents in your care? Does your tribe have an elders program? If so, would the elders program like to participate in a pilot program to gather first-person narratives via audio or video recording? And this is something that the elders subcommittee has been really focused on, is wanting to capture those first-person narratives. And we'd like to get out there sooner rather than later. And so if tribes do have programs like this, we'd love to be able to work with some of those programs to get those first-person narratives for posterity and for the record. The council has established a youth council subcommittee and is looking to create a youth council. Does your tribe have a youth program? If so, would the youth program be interested in partnering with the council? Has your tribe engaged in similar work or have existing materials that could be made available to the council, Native community, or the public? What do you hope the council will achieve through this process, and what result will be most useful for tribal governments and California Native Americans? What does success look like for this council, and what deliverables should the council be aiming for? And this is to help the council get its head around what it should be aiming for with these final recommendations at reparation and restoration. Where are the areas and locations of historical significance in your region? And again, this is not meant to be a tell us all your sacred sites and cultural resource locations. This is more where are places where significant treaties that were never ratified were signed? Where are areas that the general public doesn't know some major dispossession or massacre happened that should be daylighted in this work? But then also beyond that, where are places that are significant that aren't going to be, that your tribe is comfortable sharing, that you might recommend holding a quarterly meeting in because it feels like an appropriate space for healing or an appropriate space for understanding the magnitude of dispossession because it's the most beautiful stretch of the California coast, but it's, in some, strange ownership place or something like that. I feel like that's all I can say without getting myself in trouble. And then, are there trusted partners in your region that you recommend the council engage with in planning a regional meeting? So if there are organizations that are already doing some of this work, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're not trying to take away from efforts that are already happening. So if you know groups that are already doing amazing work in this space, we would love to partner with them to host a regional meeting. And then in the process, also highlight some of the amazing things that they're doing for your communities. Would your tribe or designee like to assist with planning meetings or hearing in your, great, my brain just stopped working, planning meetings or hearings in your region? And are there particular instances in the history of your tribe or Native Americans in your region that should be included in the record for completeness? Would your tribe prefer that the final record of the council reflect only Native American primary sources or Native and non-Native primary sources as recommended and endorsed by California Native American tribes or something else? And this is to kind of get to the question, should the final record be a primarily Native record, or should it be more whatever the tribes endorse as their record, regardless of where it comes from, should be reflected in the record because they have endorsed that as their story? And then, are there experts, elders, or community members that your tribe trusts to assist the council in representing the story of your region or community that the council should ask for ongoing assistance from? And this is really, we're trying to create an advisory council for the council that's more of an issue area expertise type of council. and I don't want to call it council because we're creating all these councils, but an advisory body where, if you know of someone who has just very detailed expertise in how land dispossession happened at the beginning of statehood and knows where all the records are and is basically the person, please let us know and send those recommendations, because we'd like to have those folks engage in the report, engage in the drafting, engage in the research, so that this council has the best advice and the best expertise. And that once that final report or those draft reports are done, they can look at it for wholeness as well, to make sure that there are no communities that have been left out, that there are no angles that have been left out, or that things are not being mischaracterized. So now I'm going to stop my share and I'm going to open it up in case folks have thoughts. It seems like there's been a lot of chat going on and I've been talking quite a bit. So we've got some resources that have been put in the chat. We've got some contact information. Great. This is perfect. And a shout out to Cheyenne, who never introduces herself, but is one of our favorite people and comes to all of our meetings. And the call, great, Loretta answered this perfectly. Okay, so I'm gonna stop at this time and see if anybody has any thoughts or comments or feedback, or if you've just joined and you want to introduce yourself to the group, we'd love to hear from you as well.
And as a reminder, it doesn't have to be about any particular topic. If you came here with any comment you'd like to make, we are more than open to that. So if you don't feel like we have this agenda, so just anything you'd like to talk about. And Charlie, I see you came on camera.
Yes, I did. Thank you for that. That's a really long story. So I was listening and unfortunately people were walking in the office and I was handling phone calls too, but I have been following this whole thing since it started. And I just want to speak again as an intertribal organization that we represent tribal people that live in Napa County, or some of the tribes that are native to this region, or tribal people that are living here right now, and they might be out-of-state Indians. Some of them are part of recognized members of federally recognized tribes. Some are unrecognized tribes, and some, like myself, were descendants, because it was my grandparents that were taken in New Mexico from their families of origin and then put into their families as servants. So we lost our tribal connection. The Towa, or Walatoa, what they call the Jemez Pueblo in New Mexico, has considered re-adopting or opening their roles to people like myself, but at this point they haven't. And my concern always, as being involved with the Intertribal Council, was just to honor my ancestors and get back in touch with my own heritage, which I started doing in about 1986. And so, of course, because I was living in Napa, then this is where I came, because as Native people, we take on and identify with the tribes in our region. And that's where I've mostly associated and affiliated with California Pomos from Lake, Sonoma, and Mendocino County. And on our Intertribal Council, we have, everybody has to be a descendant or a member of a tribe, but our Cultural Advisory Board is all California tribal, people, members of federally recognized tribes. And so we just work advocating for human rights locally. We did get a pilot program for the state of California. It's been 4 years ago now. And it was supposed to be an 18-month program, but it went on just because of some of the other partners in the program. They took longer, but we actually developed it was under the Innovations Mental Health Dollars that came through. And as an organization, I put forth a proposal to tell the story of what happened to the tribes here in Napa County. And so we went at it as a study. We developed the curriculum, and then we presented it through a mental health lens, which is, because it was mental health dollars, we had to create it in that format. And so the mental health lens was that this is a trauma. Was it too severe to tell the general public about the truth about what happened here in California, and specifically Napa County or the San Francisco Bay Area? And we had, so the first target group we were going to do two cohorts, two study groups, and the proposal was it would be 5 sessions, 1 month apart. And then the lens was putting it through the filter of trauma specialists, therapists, and psychiatrists that had to be working with Napa County Mental Health. And the requirement, again, this was to meet the requirements of the specification that it was coming through Napa County Mental Health Dollars, MHS, through HHS. And so the way we pitched it was that it would be Napa County mental health providers, either that they were working in Napa County, that they were living in Napa County, or that they were serving a population in Napa County. Or the fourth part that we really had to lobby for, but they did get accepted, was that they had heritage to Napa County. So that would include the Patwin, the Onisati, the Miwok, or the Pomo. And given that basis, they could participate in this pilot cohort session. So we had some money budgeted that we didn't have to spend out because we got trade or free. So we went ahead and did 3 cohorts. And each study group was 20 to 30 mental health care professionals, predominantly therapists working in and living in Napa County. We did a survey. I think we reached about 900 people in Napa County to see what they knew about Native people, which was nothing, which was what we knew. And but we proved it, and we tried to have a really broad base of the 4 major cities and the unincorporated regions of the county. And then we surveyed before each workshop and after each workshop. And then at the end of the 5 workshops, which was of course a 5-month period, about 30 days after the 5th month workshop, and then a year after the workshops, to see what we were screening for. Was this too critical? Was it too, what's the word? Too severe, too scary? I don't know what the word is. Too traumatic was the word, sorry, too traumatic for the general public to hear. And all of our cohorts universally said it was not too traumatic for the public to hear. And these were trauma specialists. They also felt that, was it relevant for people, for trauma specialists and therapists to hear? They felt it was very relevant and very important. It was a huge missing gap in this community. They felt it was relevant for educators. They felt it was relevant to the general public. They felt it was relevant to the children as well. And that was universal. We're now in our 9th cohort. So we did it. It was a successful pilot. Because of complications of some of the other partners, there were 4 county partners. We were all working on one aspect, and ours was the Native American history. And we called it Native American Historical Trauma and Healing Project. So it was successful. We still aren't free to release the findings, but we would like to do that. It's wrapping up. We keep thinking it's done, but it's not. The county has to approve it. And we've gone through some really horrible audits, I have to tell you, but that's all completed. But the survey and the studies are completed. We can't just release them yet, but we would like to release them. This is a pilot project. The other thing that we added on to it, because some of the tribes in our region that we work with as an agent, as an organization, they heard that we were doing these. They asked if they could participate. Scotts Valley Band of Pomo up in Lake County, and they were also facilitating a youth group in Pinoleville in Mendocino County, and administering a TANF program.
I don't know if it's on their end or whether it's.
Sorry.
That was just Councilmember Lucas. Please continue.
Okay, sorry. I didn't know she was asking a question. And should I not say the names of the tribes and the people? I was listening to the confidentiality thing, or is that okay to say them? Or
I think the tribes are okay to say.
Knowing that we're not representing them, but just saying who participated.
Yeah,
I can even get.
It's actually super helpful because we can follow up with them as well.
Okay.
This all sounds really amazing, and please continue.
Okay, thank you. And if somebody has a question, please let me know. And I know that sometimes I talk too fast. I'm trying to talk slow. So those 3 tribal 2 tribes and 1 tribal agency, they wanted to participate. And then I made a presentation to the tribal council in Lake County, and they said, yes, they wanted it to go to their staff and their employees and their tribal council. And then they felt like as tribal people, they kind of knew the story. They felt like instead of taking 1 month, the reason I did 1 month is that is so traumatic. We wanted people to have time to absorb the information. We also made the assumption, which was true, that they didn't know almost most of the information that we shared. And we just wanted to give them time to absorb it. But the tribe said, we want to go through this process really fast and see what you guys did, and we can handle it. But by the third workshop, the tribal participants said they would have preferred it be once a month because it was very hard to listen to. And the format that we used and we developed the curriculum in the first cohort, we were developing the curriculum month by month. We have cultural advisors. We had a team of 5 cultural advisors from tribes. And so in our office staff, there's a Pomo person who works and lives in Napa, and myself and him were the primary researchers in developing the curriculum. But we were putting every workshop, every aspect of it, the surveys, everything was going through this filter of tribal elders. From some of them were descendants. Their parents were full-blood, Wapo or Onisati people. So they were members of Pomo tribes in Mendocino and Sonoma County, but their ancestry direct lineage to Napa County. So we were taking some of their stories of oral tradition, and then Jim Big Bear King was a person who his family was here in Napa County. He was a Crow from Montana, but they were here during the European invasions. And so he had a lot of oral tradition. He has passed away, but that's what our council, he mentored me for 15 years. So a lot of what we share is from his personal experience, his family's experience here during the transition of what would they call colonization. And now we're referring to as the Euro invasions. And I've been saying genocides when I speak publicly for the last 25 years and being ridiculed in public and all that kind of stuff. So when Governor Newsom declared that this was a genocide, I was like, oh, the heat's off of me, and I was really glad that he had the, whatever to make that statement in public. And he was the first legislator that I know of in the whole United States government that has ever acknowledged the genocides and apologized for them. But I really appreciate it because it took the heat off of us. We're working now, the groups that we're working with in the cohorts now, they're educators. They're from college and elementary school, and then also state like the Resource Conservation District, the some of the places that were really the colonizer footholds, the Vallejo Adobe over in Sonoma County. They've got the Sonoma Mission. We're telling the story of the missions and then how it's been shaded or misrepresented and lied. And so each cohort, we presented it as a crime, and just like a crime scene. Who did it, where they did it, when they did it, and how they did it. And we said we're presenting it like the crime scene that it was. Most people do. We have about maybe it's a 40 to 50% attrition rate. So the first workshop is general, it's overview, it gives people the names of the tribes in the region, a brief history of how many tribes there are in California, how many tribes there are in the United States, just general information, assuming that most people don't know it, which most people do not. The second one is the pre-colonial, what the lifestyle, and that was the California Pomo. He talked from his experience as a childhood growing up in a remote rancheria, but also from his grandfather's words and experiences growing up pre-colonial. So we have this kind of majestic, kind of paradisical how life was. And then the third and fourth workshops are what happened and how it was a military invasion. It was not a discovery. It was not a colonization. It was a military invasion of the state of California and a takeover and a genocide of the people that lived here. And so after the third workshop, almost half the students usually do not return. We have about a 50, 40, they just can't handle it. And if I see them, because Napa is a small community, I'll see people around and they go, it was just too hard for me. I couldn't come back. But they still think it's really relevant. They think it's important. They want to study it. They want to learn more. They don't have any suggestions of how we could tell the story so it would be less sad or less tragic. most of the feedback we get, again, from the healthcare professionals. We still have at least a small percentage of those in every workshop, because that was our first target group. So they were the ones we outreach to the most in the beginning. So we're still in the early stages of this. We really have been. Jim Big Bear King is the founder of Susquehanna. They called it Susquehanna Indian Council back in 1972. He had been advocating for the local schools to teach the truth and the story, and he went, like I do, speaking, different classes and stuff, but realizing there really needs to be a systemic change at the state level, which finally now with you guys is coming. And it's something that I personally, but also this agency, has advocated for publicly at state and regional level since 1972. The Susquehanna Council was founded when the Susquehanna Village, a Putwin village at the southern part of Napa, was being unearthed to put in a freeway overpass. And Jim Big Bear King went and stood in front of the tractors by himself. He's 6'4", but he was still one man standing and saying, you can't do this. You'll have to shoot me if you want to keep digging up my people. And that's when they stopped. They called it the Bridge to Nowhere. And with Governor Brown in his first incarnation as Governor Moonbeam, working with Senator Alan Cranston, they worked with Susquehanna Intertribal Council. And back in 1972, 73, 74, it was a 3-year process. They developed what is now referred to as the Native American Heritage Commission, and how the state would deal with historical sites and archaeological, remains, cremains, all of those things, and it became a national model for what is now called NAGPRA. So this agency has a really strong history of being outspoken and putting our personal lives at danger. When we were starting some of this work, I appealed to Amnesty International because my life was being threatened pretty much about once or twice a month. Jim Big Bear was still alive, and he mentored me, and he said his life was threatened at least 3 times a week. And at that time, in the early 70s, in Napa County, a semi-rural county at the time, it wasn't as urban as it's become. But he said somebody would threaten to shoot him at least 3 times a week. And he said, if I wasn't getting threatened at least 3 times a week, I wasn't working hard enough. And this was by people who carried rifles that hung in their trucks. They used to drive around, which I think some of the rural communities still do that. But Napa in the early 70s, they were doing that. But we persevered. And so I'm really, really excited, and have been very excited hearing about this council, hearing about this work. I just am so glad that it's finally happened, and really, really want to give kudos to Governor Newsom for having the courage to step forward and make, what's a very difficult decision. So that's it. That's my 20 minutes of fame or whatever. I just wanted to say that, though, that we do hopefully, I keep thinking this month we'll release the surveys and studies. We had a professional analyst to create the surveys, do all the follow-up. So there's charts, there's feedbacks, there's what people had to say, and all of that stuff. So I think we hope that it's a good working model for other people to look at.
Thank you. We very much appreciate your sharing. And I think, in your 20 minutes of fame, as you call it, you've given us so much very critical, valuable information. And I think we'd be really interested to hear from you as that survey becomes more public, so that we can get some lessons learned. I also, the minute you explained how you set everything up as a crime scene, my brain lit up, because I am a true crime junkie, and I feel like that's actually a really neat way to get people to understand that this is a real thing that is happening in real time. So I would be interested in having some follow-up conversations with you about how that worked, and how it could even be translated into even like a real-time walking tour even. I was a history major, and we did, not to make it all about me, but we did, one of my history classes when I studied abroad was doing walking tours of France and learning about, the French Revolution and where people actually were murdered in the streets, for example. And so there's that real visceral connection, and also your memory works differently when you're moving as you learn storytelling. And so I met with a tribal chair down in the Sonoma Square, and he was telling me how they've also revived their traditional trail routes from Sonoma. And so I think that could be a really neat spot for us to even have one of these regional hearings or regional get-togethers, because Sonoma Square is where kind of everything started for the state. I mean, obviously things started with militias and gold and all the other things, but in terms of like overthrowing the Mexican government, you know, that's like a main site. And that's also where the missions stopped. And so it's pretty critical, I think, for this work. So I'd love to chat with you more a bit about the possibilities there.
Yeah, and that's something we talk about because Napa is, you know, that's 20 minutes from downtown Napa, is the Sonoma Square. And when I first moved here in 72, I'd been traveling around the world because I was trying to find another place to live in, but realized that my work really as an Indigenous person, as a displaced Indigenous person, was here. And then I was still into traveling around. So we would travel around all the time. So I would go to Sonoma for cheese and look at the square and go through all that stuff. But most of the people in Napa and Sonoma don't know. And it's right there, and they don't know it. They don't read the plaque. Ed Castillo was the Native American, the Cahuilla, who set up the Native American Studies program at Sonoma State. He's also the person who spearheaded that memorial that finally got put down in 2010, I think it was. It was barely 12 years ago, that names the people that are buried there. So Sonoma Mission was the last. It actually started in the 1795 down in San Diego. And that's what we show. Again, this was Sal and myself, but with the input of the 5 other California tribal members. And the men, which it was good that we had, it was mixed gender, mixed ages, that they really have the, let's put maps. Because me, I'm more emotional. I wanted pictures, bigger, but then maps. So we do have maps, and the map that it has the biggest impact on everybody is this map. It's a historic map of California, and there's a little coin for every mission. The missions were 150 miles apart, and when you look at that map, that's the evidence that we show that it was a military invasion, that they secured the coast. And they wiped out the tribes. Each mission is a 3-day trip to the next one. So they were, you know, wiping out the most desirable part of California, really of the whole country, some of us would say. But, and then they controlled the coast, and then the gold rush came after. So actually the invasion, I think was 1795. I'm not good with numbers, but we do have a map with the dates and the places, the names of all the missions and the tribes. But when you see it on that map, just in the coins, you can see, you know, there's not that denial factor that comes up when you talk to people. They go, no, that didn't happen. Because people do have a very intense emotional reaction, because what they have to realize is that they were lied to. Their teachers lied to them, their parents lied to them, their government lied to them. And so, of course, usually when I've been speaking the past 25 years about this stuff, people would start hating on me, you know, and wanting to. And we had to deal with the police, the sheriff, I had to deal with the CIA, the FBI, all of everybody, you know. So it's really nice to know that we can be in a whole statewide group and talk about these things, and nobody's saying, oh, you made that up. You're so delusional that you should get help. You know, are you off your meds, Charlie? You know, I've heard that so many times in the last 20 years. And so it's really just wonderful. And so I think it's you know, it's way past time to change, but our presentations are on Zoom. So anybody who wants to participate in one of the cohorts, we're setting up a cohort starting in January. So it's 5 workshops, 2 hours, once a month. Any of you can sign up and register for that. I did put my email and website in the chat. Anybody who wants to talk to me or to participate in the cohort, or even really, Christina, for you guys, I would just send you the PowerPoints, because we've set it up to be PowerPoints delivered by voice. You know, we were doing it in person and having discussions, but because of the COVID, we've gone to Zoom, which actually works better because people are in their homes, and then people are watching it in family groups with their children. And the response is much more deep, because they are emailing us right during the classes and then right after. So we're setting up much more dialogue than we did. But any of you can come and participate, or we could do one specifically for this group.
Yeah, I think what we'd like to do is we can share information through our channels, but then also ideally, if you were open to sharing materials this sounds like something that could be done in every single region of the state and every single county of the state. And so if there are people embedded in those places that could take it up and work with their local tribes to help that bigger conversation to happen, that gives this council like a million times more capacity than it can have just as its own. And so I think that would be just enormous if we could even utilize that tool.
Right. As soon as the county releases it, then we're free to share it. At this point, it still belongs, you know how it is, the funder is the intellectual property, even though we're the organization that keeps intellectual property, we can't release it till it's done, which it's done, but the other programs aren't done that we're a part of. But we would love to do that. And it was really powerful and self-affirming for us to be able to share it with the tribes that we were talking about, basically, because they were surprised that they didn't know what they didn't know. And also they really just appreciated that we did all the, you know, it's a lot of hard work, just emotional baggage, but we felt like it did give a starting point for the tribes, instead of when you're just sitting there by yourself thinking, how we're going to tell this story. It's hard. And then then you run into emotional, you know, because it's a really sad story. Some of the stories that were shared by our elder advisors were very, very difficult, you know, to hear, for all of us to hear, and for people to share, and for us to hear. You know, of this one woman shared at the Sonoma Mission, at that General Vallejo's house, you know, where the tribal people were enslaved, that her grandmother was buried alive. And that's when her great-grandfather decided what they were trying to cooperate. They were trying to survive. They were trying to cooperate with these new people. And then that's when they had this moment of thinking, this is not a good place. And so he snuck over to get his wife, and they somehow stole their child and ran in the night from there. And that's how she said, if they hadn't have done that, she wouldn't be here. Those were her great-grandparents or grandparents. You know, so those are really hard stories to hear. But I think it's really important for them to be told.
Well, and they happened. You know,
they happened.
So
that's the bottom line. They happened. And we have stories that it was really hard because some of the stories were so horrible that some of them I just thought, I just can't show this picture, because a lot of it was historical. And this was a really good time. This is a good time to bring it up, because a lot of the military records that have been locked and that we have not had access to because of social media and stuff, we had access, because I've been researching this stuff since 1995, 93. But in this last 5 years, we had access to more material than I have ever seen. And what Sal, my working partner, was able to do was find stuff from the diaries of the military that was doing the stuff. They were writing about it. They were proud of it, what they did and how they did it. And so that's their written word about what happened. Then backed up with oral traditions, because I'm sure that every tribe has stories in their families of what the survivors experienced. So I like I said, I have been pressuring the county the last 2 or 3 months to be able to release the information. Part of our agreement when I wrote out the proposal, one of our deliverables would be that we would share it at state levels. And because it didn't finish, we didn't get that part. But then when we shared it with the tribes, we were able to use that as this was our deliverable. So our part of the work was completed almost a year ago. But we just haven't been able to release it because the county is just going through whatever they're going through. Of course, anybody from the county who participated in our workshops, they're like horrified. And this is a tourist industry. Napa, Sonoma, Marin, San Francisco. They don't want the story to be told. They really don't.
Well, they probably don't want the more recent stories to be told. They've only been there for a couple decades.
Well, some of the stories aren't that, they are recent. You know, we bring it right up to the day, the last cohort, you know, because it's a PowerPoint, it's really easy to change. So what I added to the last cohort, which is from the 1950s to the present day, we talk about Governor Newsom apologizing. We talked about, you know, Deborah Haviland getting nominated and positioned to be the head of the Department of Interior, the same department that was assigned to wipe out the Indians in this area, in this parallel lines, you know, 2 parallel lines that cut a continent apart. And we just talk about it, but most people want to hear it, even when they have difficulty. That's been, we have waiting lists for people wanting to be in the cohorts.
That's great.
So I'll stop.
Well, thank you for sharing. I think this has been really enlightening and helpful, and I think has inspired a lot of thoughts about how we can make this work impactful. And also, you know, if we're able to take a look at it and participate in that Zoom, I think it'll be helpful even just for people within governor's office as well to learn a bit more. We've got in the chat, there's a group that needs to be supportive. Oh, great. I totally agree with this, Chegg. I think that is absolutely spot on. And I think that's what we've been trying to do in this process is support Native scholars. So thank you. One thing I wanted to ask, because this conversation has inspired it quite a bit, is does anyone know about any work that's been done on the concept of like cultural gaslighting? Because I know that like currently in some of the more recent years with what's been happening nationwide, that's something, but the idea that like entire cultures and entire peoples have been told that their like stories aren't real and that it's not the truth because really everybody else has been told an alternate reality. I'm wondering if anybody has thought about that, because like even the experience of being a person from a community that is continually told that their story isn't valid or real takes a toll on a person, you know, and it's not just historical trauma, it's ongoing trauma of being like devalued and having your reality be less real to people. You know, and it is the ongoing thing of having to educate every single person you meet about the reality of who you are as an individual, because they don't even know that history. So I'm wondering if anybody has heard of anything like that or any work being done in that space. Because I think it's going to be important for us to give folks tools in this context to be able to both dismantle that if they're part of the dominant culture that hasn't incorporated this experience and these peoples into their reality. And then also from the experience of people who are Native people who know what happened and continue to have to be kind of, you know, the truth tellers in a place where everybody's lying.
Again, not to dominate the conversation, but I served on an advisory board to CRIB for 6 years around the tobacco project. And I believe Mark LeBeau is the current executive director there. And he was doing back, because this would have been probably the early 90s, early 2000s that I sat on that board. But then he was doing the tobacco program, but now he's been the director. And those were topics that through DQU that we discussed a lot. We didn't use the term gaslighting, but he was surprised at how much I was doing. And he asked me once, you know, a long time ago, do you have a lot of police contact? And I just didn't say anything for a while. And I said, why are you asking that question? He goes, well, I'm just wondering. I said, well, actually I do. And he said, I said, why did you ask? And he said, well, because of what you're doing. He said, if we were doing that in our communities, we would have been in jail already. And then we just talked about what I had to deal with, you know, pretty regularly. We recently just had a mascot thing here, and it was the Mascot Wars, and we did videotape that, and we have videos up on YouTube. The people, it was like a mob, and our lives were threatened. My children, my grandchildren, it's a small community. We did ask for police presence, and initially the superintendent thought he didn't, but then they did. We did have a police presence at all those meetings because they were so violent and so awful. But I think that there's plenty of documentation on that. And we've been doing that through our YouTube channels. One of the advocates for that. And he was also a participant in developing the innovation stuff that I just talked about, the cohorts, that he went to Napa High School as a Native American, and he talks. We have a videotape of him telling his story, how the teachers were telling him, because he put down that he was Indian, and they would say, no, you're not. And they would take his paperwork and erase it and put down that he was white. All of the Indians are dead. And this young man is 32. So it was just barely 15, 20 years ago that he experienced that all through his high school years here in Napa County. And then he's the one who really brought it to the forefront. We've been bringing it subtly, but he really said, hey, this is time for this mascot to be done. But he talked about how that affected him personally, being in a school where his people were being ridiculed and everybody was doing the chop and all that stuff. And then just that we had to, we still have to deal with it. And I was just talking to a few people in the community yesterday that supported us in that. And I said, it's still everywhere, isn't it? And he goes, oh yeah. Because now people have the t-shirts that say Indians. They say we're Indians. We're the real Indians. And they're the dominant culture. And they feel, and we have that videotaped. If you go to Sasko Council YouTube, I think we have 3 videotapes on that, just showing there was no overruling narrator. It was just splits of people, how this person said this, that, you know, it's just, and it shows how bad it was. I mean, and this was just a few years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. But I think that's an important thing, because that's, especially when you get around the mascot, I think that's where you get the most of that gaslighting. And then in the audience, you know, there was some Hispanic students, they were students that were going to talk about how humiliating it was to have that kind of a mascot. And there were some people sitting in front of me, and the comments they were making about those teenage girls, those high school students, were just, they were horrible. They were criminal. Anyway, I think it's important to look at all of that.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. And we'll definitely want to follow up on that. I do want to note Cheg's comments in the chat. And if Cheg, if you wanted to speak, you are welcome to as well. I think it is very much worth connecting with this group. So we'll work with the academic subcommittee to make those connections as well, just to make sure that these groups are being worked with. And then we're in the process of getting someone on state side to kind of to organize our work on research. And so I think this sounds like a really good starting point to just also see who's doing what and see how they can feed into this work. We are hoping on the California Native American Heritage Center to have the first meeting of this council actually convene also with that advisory task force at the site of the future Heritage Center, so that we can also facilitate that discussion about what this product does as it feeds into that center as well. Because I think ideally that place is also a repository for a lot of the recordings that are housed elsewhere that are hard to find, and can also help to see different spots throughout the state, as Councilmember Lucas has suggested in the past as well. Because we agree that, oh great, Kesla's part of, okay, great, so we'll talk to her about that. Any other final comments? We've got about a minute left, and if you didn't get to comment today, feel free to email us, or you can put something in the chat, or we'll also be having a listening session on Wednesday at 6 for those of you that are available then as well. Any final comments, Councilmember Lucas?
Am I on?
Yes.
Am I on? Oh, yeah. Not really, except this was an extremely interesting presentation by this lady. Early on in her presentation, she made a comment that the information that they had acquired was too dramatic for the public to hear. I would like to know who made that decision. If it's too traumatic for the public to hear, how is it that the people who suffered from that trauma are still alive today? So I'm a real believer in telling it like it is, like that in community, or was it the dominant community? So you're frozen right now, Christina. So I don't know if I'm coming across or not. Am I? Did you hear me?
Your voice is breaking up, but Christine's moving. I was the one who made that summation. That was one of when we were going to do the project, when I was pitching to get the money, that was one of the measuring points. Was it true traumatic? But the conclusion of all the therapists and people that have participated thus far is no, it's not too traumatic, that people need to hear the truth. And Carmen, just like yourself, we had very bold cultural advisors, because I was backing down. I was thinking this stuff is too hard. It was me saying that.
Okay.
And then the cultural advisors say exactly what you said. No, this is what happened. They need to hear what really happened to our people, to our parents and grandparents.
Let me just add one thought here is I'm a believer in telling it like it is, but I'm also a believer that sometimes we wrap ourselves up in too much of the genocide. I believe that we have an inherent anger from generation to generation, and I think the DNA studies are validating that. So I'm just suggesting that we find a way to tell this story and divorce ourselves from that trauma. That takes skill. But we don't learn anything if we don't learn what our history is and what the past is. And so for that reason, I think it's terribly important that we ignore that it might be too traumatic for the dominant society. They didn't give a darn about how traumatic it was for us, and we're still here. So, we come from a very strong intellectual heritage that we should be very proud of. And I think we need to continue to tell the story as it is. So those are just my thoughts. And Christina, thank you for that.
Thank you for that, Councilmember Lucas, and thank you for sharing those thoughts while we're recording, because those are just, again, as always, spot on. With that, I think we'll go ahead and end today's listening session. Thank you all for your time. Thank you all for making the space for this conversation. And we'll see some of you on Wednesday. And for those of you who would like to connect with us offline, please feel free to reach out, and we are happy to chat. So take care, everyone.
Thank
you.
you.